Hello and welcome. This is class number 30 of the quick revision series of Prelims 2024. I know a lot of you have been taking advantage of this, which is why you are here, but a lot of you have still not hit the subscribe button for some reasons. So if you're one of those, please do hit the subscribe button before we go ahead. It takes a lot of time to make these videos and I would really appreciate if you can just hit the subscribe button and also the like button and invite your other friends here as well. I am sharing the PDF of all these lectures with you on the Telegram channel. Please join that. The link is in the description of this video. We are continuing with science and technology current affairs from the last 1 year or so. In the last class, we discussed current affairs mainly from science and specifically from space. This class also would have in the beginning a few current affairs from solar system and space, and then we'll move on to other parts. So news number 311 is carbon enhanced metal poor stars. So as you can see, these are a category of stars which have been named like this because they have a lot of carbon content but not enough metal content. And scientists have been trying to study about these stars for a very long time. Scientists at Indian Institute of Astrophysics have discovered a unique star called HE1005 1439, which is categorized as carbon enhanced metal poor. These are those stars which basically are classified into dwarf, subgiant, giants and different types of stars. As you can see, these are heavy in carbon levels but low in metal levels. That means they give an indication about very early cosmos development, because usually for the stars to survive you would need to have heavy metals, but despite not producing heavy elements at the evolutionary stage, the surface of these stars and their chemical composition shows an abundant amount of these chemicals on the surface. For these kind of research, a lot of high quality resolution spectrum telescopes have been used by the scientists. Next, another news from space. There is a phenomena called the scary Barbie. Barbies are usually not scary, but this is a phrase that is being used by the scientists. Basically what has happened, with the help of AI, scientists have discovered a humongous black hole explosion, and this supermassive black hole has been termed as the scary Barbie. This is about 1,000 times the brightness of a supernova, and scientists have called it or given it the phrase called the scary Barbie. They have identified this as the biggest cosmic explosion that has ever been observed. It seems to be a giant ball of fire, and that is why it is named as scary Barbie. Comparisons are being made with fireball. It is said to be 100 times larger than our entire solar system. This supernova will last only a few months before it disappears, but again the intensity is huge. The researchers discovered it using an AI engine called REFIT, Recommended Engine for Intelligent Transient Tracking. This is again a phenomenon that you must remember. Just remember this, scary Barbie is what? It is a name given to a huge cosmic explosion about 100 times bigger than an entire solar system. Now, why do these explosions occur? As per the scientists, they believe that a supermassive black hole may have pulled the star and ripped it apart. The force that is present around the black hole is called a tidal disruption. It separates other objects in the process, and thus this is called spaghettification. Spaghettification. Do remember this as well. The next news is about the Aeolus satellite. Why is it this in the news? EU has decided that they will take care of the space debris, or at least they will start to take care of the state debris. Now, as you know, thousands of satellites have been sent to space over the last few decades. Many of them have expired, or many of them have completed their lifetime. They are not operational anymore, but they are still orbiting in the space. The problem is that when we have so many of these satellites orbiting in the space, they might come in the way of other satellites or other missions and create a dangerous situation. The world over, countries are trying to tackle this issue, how to clear the space debris, and European Union has taken the first step in this regard. They will be bringing back the dead satellite Aeolus. It was launched in 2018. It had a 5-year period, It is orbiting at about 320 kilometers altitude from the Earth. This is a part of their project called the Copernicus project. Do you remember this? The Copernicus project is a joint operation between European Union and the European Space Agency to track environmental damage and disaster relief operations. I'll remind you quickly. Recently you saw this helicopter crash of Iranian president. Do you know when Iran's president's helicopter crashed, Iran had asked for help from Europe, and Europe, basically using its Copernicus project, had helped them to track the location of that helicopter, because it is a very advanced stage project that keeps a track of disaster relief operations. They basically use satellites to identify places where disaster might have occurred. So that is why this Copernicus project was in the news very recently also. The goal of this satellite that is being brought back was to provide accurate, detailed global wind measurements, both horizontal and vertical winds. It carried an instrument called the Aladdin Operation Laser Doppler instrument, which is the first space-based LiDAR. It emits ultraviolet pulsar radiations and it measures Doppler shift on the backscattered light to determine the speed and the altitude of the winds in different altitudes and different directions. Next, we have Project Tara. Google, along with Airtel, has now started a project called Project Tara. The idea is to provide internet to Indian villages which are not connected with the broadband. The project's name, as I said, is Tara. Do remember, it's a joint collaboration between Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, and Airtel. How are they doing it? By using free space optical communication. So they will use beam of light to transfer data at very high speeds over long distances without the need to draw all these long wires. It is supposed to be cost effective and high speed data transmission in remote areas. There were some other similar projects launched earlier. Google, for example, had launched a project called Project Loon, which was to send very high balloons into the stratosphere, and that would basically emit these waves so that people in that nearby area can use internet. But that project had many challenges, security challenges, etc. So Google did not go forward with that. Now Project Tara is being used as a replacement. The idea is again to ensure that underserved communities where we don't have internet connectivity or we have limited internet connectivity, they can get their hands on this. Now, see, for companies such as Google, whose entire revenue is generated based on how many people use internet, for them it is in their interest that as many people use internet as possible, because the more people use internet, the more are the chances you will use Google, more are the chances you will use YouTube, more are the chances they will basically show you ads, and then they can earn revenue. So it is in Google's interest. They might project this as a CSR activity, as an activity in the interest of the society. That is one aspect of it, but it's also a revenue related thing. The more people that use the internet, the better are the chances for Google to earn revenue. As simple as that. Next news is about NASA's project called OSIRIS-REx. The idea of the project is that they have been studying an asteroid called Bennu for a long time. NASA wants to basically land on it, take a part of that asteroid and bring it back to the Earth to undertake more projects, to undertake more research on that asteroid and its composition. That is the entire idea. They want to bring back this asteroid sample, pretty big size, so that they can undertake that study. This is NASA spacecraft called OSIRIS-REx. It stands for Origins, Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification, Security, Regolith Explorer. As I told you, the goal is simple: to collect a sample that weighs at least 59.5 grams from the asteroid Bennu and bring the sample back to the Earth to help the scientists investigate how planets are formed, how life might have begun, and to understand that in case asteroids hit Earth, then what would happen. See, we have to be ready for these kind of eventualities in the future, and a large part of our research and money goes into this only, to be prepared for future threats and this will help us understand how the asteroids work, what are they made up of, so that if they eventually hit the Earth, we have to be prepared for it. This OSIRIS project is the first US spacecraft to collect sample from any asteroid. It was launched in 2016 and it reached the target asteroid in 2018. It's bringing back a small sample to the Earth for study. The sample has already arrived, by the way. The extended mission will be to orbit around the Earth asteroid. The other asteroid that they will be studying is Apophis in 2029. Next, once again, a big company trying to offer internet to the people. This is called Project Kuiper. Project Kuiper is an initiation of Amazon. So last one was Project Tara, that was Alphabet, that is Google and Airtel. Now this is Project Kuiper. This is what Amazon has been doing. It is Amazon's space internet project system. Now there are multiple companies that are doing this already. Elon Musk has a company called the Starlink. In fact, Starlink has become very famous in the past 2 years. Ever since the Ukraine-Russia war had started, Russia had targeted a lot of very important infrastructure of Ukraine. So people in Ukraine could not use broadband. They requested Elon Musk to provide internet connectivity through satellites. This is what his company does, called Starlink. Similar thing is being done by other companies as well. Airtel also is doing this, and now Amazon also has got into it. This is called Project Kuiper. It has successfully conducted certain tests in the low Earth orbit. Amazon is not doing it alone. They have signed certain agreement with SpaceX to launch rockets with the help of Elon Musk's SpaceX company. The target is to build a network of over 3,000 satellites in the low Earth orbit. One of the problems, or I won't say problems, but one of the criticism that many people are doing of these space internet-related projects is that the number of satellites that they are sending and are planning to send are huge. When you create so much traffic jam in the space, again it becomes problematic, because it is the same low Earth orbit where a lot of satellites are being sent. And when you have a situation where there are too many satellites and there are chances of one satellite running into the other one, that creates a huge problem and that creates a huge issue. Specifically when the satellites are giving you important things such as internet connectivity, and when the satellite basically has an issue in its movement, etc., it becomes a big problem. Starlink also, they are continuously sending satellites, more and more satellites to cover more area. They also have planned to launch thousands of satellites. And just for comparison, so far in the entire history of ISRO, they have not sent 1,000 satellites. So thousands of satellites, over 3,000 is a huge number of satellites. This project will have three main components: the ground infrastructure. For example, those who want to use Starlink, you can't just use it from your phone. So there will be a small kind of a device that will be given to you by the company, similar to like you have the DTH. So you have that small dish antenna that is placed at your house. Similarly, Starlink company gives you a kind of a receiver. So that will be ground infrastructure, that will be gateway antennas that will send and receive the customer data to and from the satellites. It will keep the satellites in proper operations. The global network will basically connect through these gateways. Second component will be the satellites that the company will be sending, thousands of them. They will be in the low Earth orbit. They will extend to about 2,000 kilometers above the Earth. And then the third will be customer terminal. I told you, the customers will be given these small kind of units that they will place at their homes to receive the broadband services. Just like you have modems right now at your home, similarly you will have these antennas at your home, and then you can connect your Wi-Fi through that. Other companies are also doing this. Starlink example, I've already given it to you. It is working in many parts in US, in Ukraine and some other countries also. It is not working in India. These Starlink satellites fly much closer to the surface to have much lesser latency and increased connection bandwidth. See, the idea is the higher your satellite is, the more area you will be able to cover. Think of it like this. If this is the Earth, if the satellite is here, so this is the area it can cover, right? If the satellite is here, maybe it can cover this much area. But the problem is, the higher you go, the lesser will be your connection bandwidth. So this is again a decision that you have to take. Do you compromise with the speed to have much higher coverage and your individual customers will not be happy, but you'll be able to get more customers? Or in order to have more customers happy, you will have to send many more satellites at smaller altitude. So that's a decision that these companies will have to take. In India, Jio Fiber is also working on this. India's first satellite-based Giga Fiber service is being worked upon by Jio. It is working on ensuring that they are able to offer such services in many parts of the country. Then there's OneWeb, as I told you, Airtel is also working on that. It's a low Earth orbit, again, satellite network. They have launched 40 satellites in Jan 2023. They now have total of 542 satellites in the low Earth orbit. So they are again trying to get as many satellites in the space as possible. Next news, number 317, three-parent baby. Now this is a topic that remains in the news, a three-parent baby. Now what do you mean by three-parent baby? The idea is simple. A three-parent baby would obviously mean three people are involved here. Usually when the mitochondria of the cell is defective, in the mother cell, when the mitochondria is defective, that has to be replaced. So for that replacement, you require a third person to come into this equation. The third person that donates the mitochondria will not have any DNA. The DNA in the born baby will be of the two parents only. The third person will come in and specifically will donate mitochondria. So that is why it's called mitochondrial donation. So the third person who will come in, as I told you, the donor, his or her basically role will be to provide a healthy mitochondrial DNA. It is located outside the nucleus, responsible for energy production in the cells. As you know, mitochondria is known as the generator or the energy provider, the powerhouse of the cell, because it is mitochondria that produces all the energy. The biological father will contribute the sperm that will have half the child's nuclear DNA. The mother will contribute the nuclear DNA. The vast majority of the child's physical genetic traits will be from the biological mother only. The donor, as I told you, will just play a role of the mitochondrial DNA. It's called the mitochondrial replacement treatment. It removes the nucleus from the mother's egg, places it in a healthy donor cell, and the embryo contains nuclear and mitochondrial DNA. The aim is to ensure that mitochondrial diseases do not pass on from mother to the child, because these are genetically passed on diseases. We don't want that to happen. So to stop that, mitochondria of the mother is replaced by a healthy mitochondria. Next news, 318. The government of India announced generic drugs for rare diseases. Now generic drugs, as you know, are non-branded drugs. Like paracetamol, if it is sold by the name paracetamol only, it is generic drug. But paracetamol, when branded, can be sold by multiple names by different companies. Some sell it as Dolo, some sell it by the name of Parasip, some sell it by different names. So there are different names given. But generic drug means no branding, just paracetamol, sold as paracetamol. Generic drugs are much cheaper, almost 1/10 of the cost cheaper. But the problem with generic drugs so far was that generic drugs are made for very common diseases, not for specialist diseases. To cure specialist diseases which are extremely, I would say, uncommon, for them you still had to go to branded drugs, extremely hard to find, extremely expensive. Now the government, realizing that, has introduced generic drugs for 4 rare diseases as well. Now what are these rare diseases? First, tyrosinemia type 1. Second, Gaucher's disease. Third, Wilson's disease. And 4, Dravet-Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. These are the 4 diseases against which generic drugs are being made available. Again, generic drugs are extremely cheap. They have the exactly same ingredients, just that they don't have a brand name. It can only be marketed after the brand name's drug's patent has expired. So when a new technology comes in, when a new drug is made, let's say when paracetamol would have been first invented, whoever was the inventor would have taken a patent for 20 years. Only after the patent would have been over for 20 years, then they would have been allowed to sell, or people would have been allowed to sell paracetamol as a generic medicine also. So generic medicines are only sold when the patent etc. is over. Only then you can sell it by reducing the cost. What are rare diseases? WHO defined these as lifelong conditions that affect 1 to 8% of India's population. The treatment include enzyme replacement therapy, gene therapy, stem cell therapy, etc. In the US, Orphan Drug Act incentivizes orphan drug development. In India, we have the 2021 National Policy for Rare Diseases that gives financial assistance from the side of the government, because again rare diseases are extremely the treatment is extremely expensive. Some of them don't have a treatment. If they do have a treatment, they would be at very few places in the world to travel to then afford that. It's extremely rare, so it's very expensive. The government has to come in. These are the 4 diseases that have been chosen here. Do remember the names. Tyrosinemia affects liver, it results in jaundice. The Gaucher's disease usually has anemia or results in anemia in the human body. Wilson's disease will give you slurred speech, tremors. Dravet-Lennox will give you severe neurological, intellectual issues. This is how these diseases usually are seen. Talking of diseases, one more disease that was a lot in the news is the foot and mouth disease. These foot and mouth disease spread amongst cattle. About 1.8 lakh cattle were vaccinated in Virudnagar. This is just one-off news. Apart from this, also in many other parts of the country, the government provided vaccination to cattle, to the cattle farmers for their cattle against foot and mouth disease. It's a viral disease. It was spreading in large numbers in multiple parts of India. It affects cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, etc. Basically, it's a big threat to livestock industry. The disease is estimated to circulate in 77% of the global livestock population. There are 7 different strains that might affect the cattle. There are vaccinations available, but there are individual vaccines for all the different strains. So like when we had the COVID-19 vaccine, we were not told that this is for Omicron, this is for this variant or that variant. We just took one vaccine. Imagine if every new variant you require every new vaccine, that becomes tough. That's the point here. With every new variant, you require a specific vaccine to give immunity to the animal. And that's when it becomes problematic. When animals have these kind of diseases, either they pass away, if they don't pass away, then the milk production, etc. reduces. That is a financial loss to the farmer. That also impacts the overall market. And that's why the government had to take multiple steps to stop that. We have the National Animal Disease Control Program for the foot and mouth disease. It has been running from 2019. It aims to control brucellosis by 2025 and vaccination and eventual entire eradication of the disease by 2030. That is the entire goal. Similar to this, the name is similar. Similar to this, we have a disease called hand, foot and mouth disease. This is a disease in humans. The foot and mouth was the cattle-based disease. Hand, foot and mouth are diseases that you see in humans, mainly in children under the age of 5, but anyone can get it. Not that serious, but it is contagious. It can spread from person to person. It is again caused by a virus. These are viruses called non-polio enteroviruses. So this is again a disease that can be treated with anti-allergic medicines mainly. Not very serious, but you do see it happening in many parts of the world, especially to children. Last news for this particular class is the chimeras. Chimeras basically are kind of new animals that are developed artificially or naturally by taking genes from multiple species. So when they are developed naturally also by 2 species combining which are not used to each other, or artificially also, they can be made in the lab. Recently the scientists have generated a live monkey of the species of long-tailed macaw in non-human primates. So again, the scientists have been testing or have been experimenting with this. They have been able to produce a monkey with a species of long-tailed macaw. Chimera, as I said, refers to an organism that contains cells or tissues from different sources, often of genetically distinct individuals. They can occur naturally also in nature, and they can be scientifically made for research purposes by scientists also in lab. Scientists can create the chimeras in research for research purposes. They can combine cells or tissue from different organisms and then study how the animal will be born. Naturally, it can also happen during cell exchange during pregnancy. It can also occur through fraternal twins. So that is again something that helps the scientist understand, because see, a lot of these animals hold the key to development of many medicines and vaccines. You saw when COVID-19 vaccine was being developed, a lot of these tests were being done on animals of different types. So we have to understand how these animals are made, which of these animals are closer to humans, and that is how these studies are helpful in the long run. There are a lot of medical applications, I told you, including organ transplantation. Donor organ shortage can be addressed using this. We saw recently pig kidney was transplanted to a human, although that person eventually died, but that has been done. So that is why human cells into animals, if that becomes a reality, it can result in good transfer of organ transplantation or more organs for transplantation purposes. Individuals with two or more distinct cell lines, they can also occur due to various genetic development processes, and that is also something that can have potential in different applications in medicine and technology in the future. This brings us to the end of this session. I hope you learned something new and you are revising stuff that you might have read or not read about science and technology current affairs. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, bye bye. Take care of yourself. Jai Hind.